We begin with that major breakthrough in the debt ceiling standoff. President Biden announced a tentative agreement with House Speaker Kevin McCarthy to avoid defaulting on outstanding U.S. debt. Let's get into some of the details. The two struck a deal Saturday night after weeks of high-stakes negotiations, and it comes just days before the U.S. is set to run out of money. The agreement still has to go be approved by Congress before the president can actually sign it. There are early signs it could face a tough road in the House. The president warned there is still a lot of work to be done to avoid a crisis.
We've got good news. Just spoke with Speaker McCarthy, and we've reached a bipartisan budget agreement that we're ready to move to the full Congress. And I think it's a really important step forward. That agreement now goes to the United States House and to the Senate. I strongly urge both chambers to pass that agreement. Let's keep moving forward on meeting our obligations and building the strongest economy in the history of the world.
Let's bring in NBC News congressional correspondent Julie Sirkin. Hi, Julie. Good morning. Thanks for spending this holiday with us. So we heard also President Biden say that nobody got everything that they wanted in this agreement. So tell us here, what are some of the biggest concessions and also wins for both Democrats and Republicans here?
Yeah, good morning, Savannah. Happy Memorial Day. Look, having spent literally every minute in the Capitol this weekend, I can tell you both sides are working very hard to try and sell this as a win for their side. So let's talk about what is in this bill and what finally made it in. If you listen to President Biden, he'll say he stopped work requirements for Medicaid from going into effect. He stopped some of these harsher policies that Republicans were able to pass in their bill, kind of marking the starting point for their side on these negotiations. But it does raise the debt ceiling for 2 years, $4 trillion lift, which is why we heard some grumblings from some conservative Republicans. And it does cut $1.5 trillion in spending over the next several years. This is significant for both sides because Republicans, of course, did not want to raise the debt ceiling without those spending cuts. And Democrats kept pushing for a clean debt ceiling hike, both of which, of course, neither side got. But what it does is it protects Medicaids, but it does expand work requirements for SNAP and food stamps, meaning if you were previously able to qualify for those food stamps up to the age of 49, now you have to have a job up to the age of 54 if you're able-bodied and if you don't have dependents to qualify for that measure. It also expands permitting reform for energy companies, making that process easier. And it clawed back some COVID funds and IRS funding as well to come up with that spending cut number. Now, it does not touch the VA. Veterans Health remains intact, and it fully funds defense spending, even lifting that number for the next year.
Julie, we also don't honestly have that much information at this point about how this deal was able to be reached. I mean, there was very little insight given at this point. But he did have this to say. The president said this about coming to terms with a new debt ceiling. Let's take a listen to some of that.
They passed the debt ceiling, and they said they'd only do it on condition that it have all these cuts in it. I said, I'm not going to do that. You pass the debt ceiling, period. I'll negotiate with you on the cuts, what you say, what's going to happen, what the budget's going to look like. That's what we are negotiating in order to get to them deciding that they're going to go along with a new debt ceiling.
Knowing that this has been such a long road to get to this point, what else do we know about the specifics of the negotiations, about the back and forth behind closed doors?
You know, here's the totally wild thing, right? Because a week ago from today, they literally had nothing done.
Right.
I was talking to working on this deal, and it really came together in the last 72 hours. One of the Republican negotiators told me yesterday that it took the president coming back from overseas, remember he cut those overseas trips short, to really seal the deal on this and be able to get some kind of agreement with Speaker McCarthy. They were working on text since Saturday. They were working on it all day yesterday as well, 150 pages of it, and it really took a lot of compromise from both sides, because look, the reality is Republicans control the House. They already managed to pass their bill narrowly, but they passed it, and that really put some wind in their sails as they went to the negotiating table here. Democrats on the flip side control the Senate, obviously the White House. The Republicans did need to bend to them to come together and meet in the middle, and overall you hear the two leaders say that this was a bipartisan negotiation. This was a compromise, not everything everyone wanted.
Julie Sirkin, thank you so much for your reporting here. We appreciate it. Well, a record number of Americans took to the skies and highways this Memorial Day weekend. According to AAA, more than 42 million Americans traveled more than 50 miles from home this weekend, while nearly 37 million people drove to their destinations. That is up 6% from last year. And while drivers faced some minor slowdowns on the nation's roadways, it was relatively smooth sailing. Meanwhile, the TSA says they expect to screen roughly 10 million passengers by the end of today. But so far, it seems it's going to be better than last year. Less than 1% of flights are getting canceled. With all the talk of travel, we sometimes forget what this holiday is actually all about. And that is, of course, remembering our nation's service members who lost their lives in the line of duty. NBC News military analyst and Medal of Honor recipient Colonel Jack Jacobs is here with how you can remain respectful and focus on that purpose while still celebrating this Memorial Day. Plus, Katie Nastro, a travel expert, is going to talk to us about how to get home without too many headaches. But first, let's head to NBC News correspondent George Solis. He's been tracking the holiday travel all weekend, and he joins us now from Philadelphia International Airport. Hey, George, good morning. So how has it been this weekend? What's it like right now? How crowded is it?
Hey, good morning, Savannah. Yeah, things looking fairly good here at Philadelphia International, as they have all weekend. We can probably call this the calm before the storm, right? We know that a number of people will begin to make that commute home from the holiday weekend, putting the airlines and other forms of transportation to the test. As you mentioned, airlines hoping to repeat the meltdown of last year when there were those rampant delays and cancellations as a result of those staffing and crew shortages. Airlines saying they were prepared for the rush this time. Today, the FAA expects some 42,000 flights at some of the nation's major airports. And we've been keeping a look at the misery map. So far, a lot of green on the map. Most of the delays right now appear to be in the New York airspace. You might expect that to change as the afternoon progresses. Of course, the other big part of this is the cancellation rate has remained under 1%. Secretary Pete Buttigieg highlighting that this weekend because that is obviously very good news and a symbol of what they have been saying as far as the airline preparation. Now, I've been talking to a number of travelers here at the airport over the weekend who said this was the year they wanted to get out. This is probably the most normal they have felt being at the airport. Take a listen to some of my conversation.
Get here early. Keep the stress. The earlier you get here, the less stress you have. And stress-free traveling is the best way to go.
Yeah, you mentioned the number of people driving, 37 million. That's probably no surprise. Obviously, we know that gas is about $1 cheaper, give or take, on your state than it was last year. So a lot of people decided to pack up the car and hit the road for that 50-mile or more destination. And based on some of the photos I've seen of people and families, a lot of people making good of the weather, too, which hasn't been too much of a factor, it seems. Savannah?
Awesome, George. Thank you. Stick with us. I want to now bring in, though, travel expert Katie Nastro. Hey, Katie. So that traveler there's some good advice here. You know, we're hearing from some people at the airport. If you are flying home today, what are some tips that you say to make it a smooth one?
Sure. I mean, on Friday alone, we saw 2.7 million people get on a flight. That's what TSA reported. So you might be thinking, oh, no, am I going to encounter a busy airport and all the stress that can sometimes go with traveling? But the best piece of advice that we can offer is, if you have a connecting flight, check to see what the weather is like in your connection city. If it's looking a bit dicey, sometimes you can contact the airline and actually have them reroute you. So that's something to just keep in the back of your head. As well as this is a really great day to utilize your TSA PreCheck, especially for the whole family. Kids 13 to 17 are actually allowed to go through a TSA holder, parent or guardian, this holiday weekend. So getting the whole family through should be a lot less stressful. And for those of us who don't have TSA PreCheck, for only $15 a year, so that's good for 5 years, you can get it and have a stress-free security line experience. So that's something, again, to keep in mind. And then regardless if your flight is canceled or significantly delayed, know that by law, you are entitled to a full cash refund if you should take it, or a new flight, period, end of story. So regardless of what happens, just remember that you are covered.
Yeah, that is a tip I think we've all become a lot more familiar with in the last couple of years as we've seen these crazy numbers of cancellations, lost luggage, big delays, that kind of stuff. George, that was something that we did actually see last Memorial Day. Are we expecting anything like that? Any mass cancellations, anything like last year?
Yeah, that's the expectation. And today's obviously the test of that. We know that, again, as I mentioned, the cancellation rate has been under 1%. So we will see throughout the day. We'll be keeping a close eye on flight delays and cancellations around the country. But the airline's saying they have got it. They have got the staffing. They are hoping to avoid a repeat of what we saw last summer, Savannah.
Absolutely. Katie, quickly before we go, if you're at home, maybe one of our viewers, thank you for joining us from home this morning, but this is making you kind of have a travel bug talking about all this. Are there any deals left out there? Where should we look?
Sure, there are definitely deals to be had. You know, before getting on here, I found a really great deal from New York City down to Puerto Rico in August, the height of summer, for $243 round trip. And so a lot of us are thinking, oh no, is it too late to find any great deals? While finding last minute summer deals is definitely tough, just remember this. If you can be a little bit flexible, the first 2 weeks in June and the last 2 weeks in August can actually save you about 40% versus traveling in the middle of summer when everybody's off from school and everybody's looking to take advantage of the better weather. So if you can be a little bit flexible and you want to still save, look to those 2 weeks and kind of skirt the summer.
Absolutely. Going travel expert Katie Mastro and our own George Solis, thank you so much, and happy Memorial Day to you both. Now let's get a check on your morning news now weather. Michelle Grossman is joining us on this Memorial Day with your latest forecast and a sneak peek at the week ahead. Hi, Michelle. Good morning.
Hi there, Savannah. So good to see you on this Memorial Day. And the good news is, weather-wise, we are pretty quiet across the country. We do have some hiccups, but for the most part, we're looking good. And as George said, travel going really well, knock on wood, as we go throughout this Memorial Day, at least weather-wise. So taking a look at radar, we do have some green showing up on radar. That's showing us where the rain is, and we will have rain in spots today. But the major cities looking fairly good. Let's focus on this coastal low. We've been talking about it all weekend long. We are talking about it at the end of last week as well. It's an area of low pressure that's sort of spinning off the Carolina coast. It's bringing some rain. It was a dreary weekend there. It's going to be dreary again today. And those showers could reach portions of the mid-Atlantic too. So even as far north as D.C. into the Delmarva, we could see some showers. Even Philly could see some showers as well. We're not talking a washout in those spots, but still could see a shower. So this is what it looks like today for your holiday outlook. Cool and wet in the Carolinas to the mid-Atlantic. Heavy rain is possible. It's likely really in portions of southern Texas. We could see some scattered storms even from the northern plains, the central plains, southern plains. Spotty showers throughout portions of the Intermountain West and also northern California. But New York City, 78 degrees, lots of sunshine, really beautiful there. Jacksonville, 88, partly sunny skies. Phoenix, you're going to be really warm, but you're used to that, 100 degrees with lots of sunshine. And we're looking at 92 in Vegas. Travel-wise, this is what I was talking about. Weather-wise, we're looking pretty good. We could see some moderate impacts in Philly, D.C., Charlotte, Dallas, and Houston, but we're not expecting major delays. And really, Los Angeles looks good. San Francisco, Salt Lake City, Minneapolis, Miami, and Orlando looking in the green. But we are watching that mid-Atlantic soaker. We're going to be watching that today. Here's the good news. We're finally going to see it pull off the coast tomorrow. But today, still persistent rain, gusty winds, some cool temperatures. We saw temperatures even 25 degrees below what is typical for this time of year. So that's not ideal for the unofficial start to summer. And then tomorrow, we're finally going to see this low shifting off the coast over the Atlantic. And we're going to finally see those rain and clouds disappearing. But for now, we're looking at the chance for some rain today. You can see pockets of some heavier downpours. That's where you're seeing the yellow there. So if you're in these spots, you need to prepare for that. But overall, you're going to see that move off tomorrow. And then we're also looking at the chance for some storms in the southern plains. Savannah?
Awesome. Michelle, hey, lots of good news there. We will take it.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, and enjoy your Memorial Day.
Yeah.
Well, many of us will be outside enjoying that great weather or maybe coming home from vacation. Memorial Day is really about a time to honor and remember those service members who died in the line of duty. NBC News military analyst and Medal of Honor recipient Colonel Jack Jacobs joins us now on this. Good morning, Colonel. It is always so wonderful to have you with us, especially on this Memorial Day. First, I'm just wondering if you could help us put this day in context. Tell us why Memorial Day is important to you as one of our heroes, what you want people at home to think about today.
Well, I would never say it's not a good idea to get together with friends and family and take a day off and enjoy each other and the blessings of liberty. But we have to remember that all this liberty came at enormous cost. This used to be called Decoration Day. We would go out to cemeteries and place flags and flowers on the graves of the fallen. I grew up in the shadow of the Second World War, where my father fought, and we have to remember we lost almost 500,000 Americans killed during the Second World War. We've lost many more since then in the wars we fought to preserve America's interests, the interest of our allies, and our freedom. And it will really be a worthwhile exercise to remember that people gave their lives so that we could enjoy a day like today. Those who forget that, to paraphrase Abraham Lincoln, are making a very, very big mistake. Those of us who actually fought in combat do remember this, not just on Memorial Day, but almost every other day since then, since we fought, Savannah.
Such a powerful reminder. It's such an important conversation to be having. Colonel, what are some ways that people can honor those who gave the ultimate sacrifice protecting our country?
Well, we live in an environment in which we've decided to outsource the defense of the country to a very small number of young men and women who are willing to do that. And so the defense of the country seems to be very, very far away. It's not something in which we're involved. But it really would be worthwhile from time to time for people to think about all those young people out there right now, all over the world, who are defending us and keeping us free. But there are other ways that people can do good works. We have lots and lots of veterans out there. There's a large number of veterans organizations that take care of veterans and their families. We have to remember that families serve as well while the service member is deployed, many of whom are deployed right now. A quick plug, I happen to be a board member of the Children of Fallen Patriots Foundation, which raises money to send to college kids who've lost a parent killed in action. There are lots of worthwhile veterans organizations out there, and getting involved with them or in local organizations that take care of veterans is vitally important for our community and for the veterans themselves, Savannah.
And Colonel, for those families of fallen service members, maybe it's some of our viewers, maybe it's our viewers' neighbors, what kind of support do they need?
Well, they often need a great deal of emotional support, sometimes financial support. Don't forget the fallen service member is frequently the only breadwinner, and families are left, frequently families with children are left with no one to assist them. But I think the thing that holds military units together, the sense of family, the sense of comradeship, the perception that we're all in it together, that should extend to communities too. And it would be worthwhile for people in communities to seek out veteran members and their families so that they can assist them. I'm always reminded of the observation of Benjamin Franklin, who just before the Revolutionary War started, wrote, "We must hang together or we will surely hang separately." Well, that's true in military families and military organizations, but it would be useful if people who are in communities where there are military members, the veterans and their families, to think of that as well, Savannah.
Absolutely. Colonel Jacobs, I'm so happy we had this conversation this morning. Thank you for joining us on Memorial Day. Thank you for helping us remember. I love what you said. It would be worthwhile to think about how we have these blessings of liberty. So powerful. Thank you very much. We appreciate you. Thank you. And your father, you're coming from a family of service members. Thank you for your service, Colonel. It's always good to have you. Well, while many families this weekend will enjoy that extra day off, time by the pool or the barbecue, others are paying tribute, as we were just discussing, to the men and women in our armed forces who have made the ultimate sacrifice. NBC's Lindsay Reiser revisits one Wisconsin family whose 3 daughters went to war, with one never coming home.
It started as a testament of American patriotism and duty.
Tonight we have a story of a thoroughly modern military family that has a lot of people thinking way back to Saving Private Ryan.
3 sisters, twins Charity and Michelle, and older sister Rachel, going to war in Iraq with the Wisconsin National Guard.
I have a twin sister. It's going to be really hard.
But less than a year into her deployment, 20-year-old Michelle was killed when her Humvee was ambushed. Sisters Charity and Rachel flew home. Michelle's casket followed. Michelle's 2004 death making international headlines, raising fresh questions about what to do when siblings go to war.
She had seen the worst of Iraq, and yet she kept her faith in God and in humanity.
This is a really good picture, too.
Today, Michelle's parents, John and Lori Whitmer, still live in Wisconsin.
Just like before we lost Michelle or after. There was such a change. Everything just changed. And it never goes back.
These days, they find joy in their 10 grandchildren. John is writing a second book after sharing Michelle's story in hopes of helping other families cope with grief. Why was it important for you to be so black and white about the darkest moments of your family's life?
Because other people are going through the same thing. Because then they may know that they're not alone.
It's been 20 years since the start of the Iraq War and 19 since Michelle's passing. But her memory and name live on, like in the street sign near her childhood home, and in her niece's name.
I just feel that it was the name I was being meant to give. Like, I'm so happy to be named after her.
I wonder what she would have been like and if she would have had kids of her own. And is balsamic okay with you guys?
Michelle's twin Charity, who retired from the military after serving 8 years, now lives in Texas and has 3 girls of her own, including oldest Madison Michelle, all preparing this Memorial Day weekend to honor Michelle's memory.
There's just a solemnity when you lose somebody you loved so much, and they have this day to honor all of the soldiers who have lost their lives. You just look at it in such a new way.
I just try to live as the best person that I can be and just remember that she's probably looking down on me. So I'm trying to make her proud.
You want to put it up?
The Whitmer family says while time has sanded the sharp edges of grief, there's not a day that goes by that they don't think of Michelle.
She will be gone 20 years next April, and that's as old as she was. You never want to believe that your children will be forgotten, and she's not forgotten.
She's not forgotten.
An impossibly high price for any family to have to pay for a grateful nation, a time to remember. Lindsay Reiser, NBC News, New Berlin, Wisconsin.
Lindsay, what a great story there. It's so important that we've taken this time this morning to discuss the real meaning of this day. Thank you, Lindsay, for that.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking news by downloading the NBC News app.